edition of which I'm holding here. And the piece follows the adventures of Sabiha Bano, a wealthy Pakistani socialite who meets young women that she's interested in on public buses. And stories like this, the one about Bano, I understand, were silently collecting dust until Faiza Khan and Aisha Raja stumbled upon them and discovered that this story was part of several erotic Urdu fiction serials that had thrived in Pakistan in the 1970s. So I was wondering if you could talk about the process of translating this story. What intrigued you about translating it? Was this a genre of writing that you were aware of? Were you a follower of this at that time?
You want me to confess to reading lesbian erotica when I was young? Never. No,
but are you interested in translation? Is that something that you've done?
I wasn't. Faiza said, can you contribute something? And I said, I actually don't really have anything. Maybe I can translate something. And what? And then somehow, sort of we stumbled upon this, and which I used to read when I was sort of most boys my age. But, the funny and strange and slightly sad thing is that this collection, for example, has like 8-10 brilliant short stories by new writers. And for some strange reason, everybody, the reviewers, people, kind of everybody talks about that bit of lesbian erotica. So I guess sex sells like 70s or 90s or like, sort of even now. I don't really think it was erotica. It was detective fiction. You used to have like these digests in which like, sort of there was in every episode. And these went on for years and years and years. So there's like an adventure, and every adventure, sort of has to have a bit of, sort of sex in it. It just so happened that it was like, sort of a woman who liked other women. But rest of the time, sort of she was actually hunting down Arab sheikhs mostly who were trying to kidnap Pakistani girls and kind of fighting with smugglers and kind of, doing all kind of good stuff. But people just, sort of...
Well, I mean, as you're absolutely right. I mean, it's made it to the New York Times. I mean, people have been writing a lot about this issue in large part, I think, because of the translation that you did. And I would imagine not being able to read it in its original language, I don't know, but also it strikes me as it's a nuanced translation as well. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the process. How do you translate? Do you go word for word?
This was my first attempt, and this was easy because, sort of, it's all about what. But I've just translated another story by Ali Akbar Natiq, who's a brilliant Urdu writer. And that was a bit difficult. I've done like 4 or 5 drafts. Now it's done. But it is a lot of hard work. And actually, and now I kind of begun to realize that why doesn't it happen? Because Pakistan has this major problem. That Sindhi literature doesn't get translated into sort of Urdu literature doesn't get translated into Sindhi, Punjabi literature, like even Punjabis don't know what's being written in Punjabi. So nobody knows like each other's stories, basically. And now I've kind of tried having translated this story because it's a lot of hard work. It's a labor of love. Nobody kind of, sort of really pays well for that kind of thing. So it just has to come through, like if you really, really love something, and you would want your friends or sort of other people who like reading but can't read in that language. So I think it only comes from that kind of sort of that I really would like other people to share this experience that I've been through. Yeah.
And do you use the same part of the brain to write as you do to translate?
I really don't know.
I mean, because it strikes me, it's a creative act, but it's in a different...
Yeah, I mean, you obviously kind of use more dictionaries, and you kind of, and you have then friends, and you suddenly realize that actually you have friends who've translated, and they are kind of, actually quite good at it, and they know tricks. So you kind of show them, like, a draft, and then they would, sort of make it better for you. But yeah, I think if it works out in the end, like, if you sort of complete the translation, if it captures at least some of what the original, and then people read it, I think then it's a very satisfactory experience, as was this. Yeah.
Now, you write different things in different languages, I understand. Yes. And I was wondering, what language do you think in?
What language do you think in?
I think in English. But that's because I only really speak English.
I don't know. I mean, I think depends, like, sort of when I'm sort of half awake in the morning, I probably think in Punjabi, and then, then, the day goes by, kind of a bit of Urdu, a bit of English, like, sort of, yeah, I don't really know. I've never been able to figure that out. Like, people would sometimes have these theories that what language do you dream in? God knows, like, sort of you dream in every kind of language. I was dreaming in Hebrew the other day, and I don't even know, I don't even know Hebrew. So, so these, I mean, these are mysteries. I've never been able to.
But no, so of the languages, do you speak? You speak Urdu and Punjabi and English and
Yeah, no, this, yeah.
And do each of those languages have certain properties that make them uniquely suited to different times of day or different
Yeah,
kinds
when I
of
want to
description?
kind of lecture people, for example, do a rant about, like, how bad things are around us, then I think I gravitate towards Urdu, because it kind of, you can really do like a big khutbah in Urdu. And people, for some strange reason, kind of like it. And you like, sort of being verbose and kind of, using this and drawing on all these historical references, which are quite familiar to people. So yeah, that's when I tend to write towards Urdu. Drama, whenever I try to write, I think I try to write in Urdu, or like, sort of whatever language it is that we speak, a mixture of Urdu, English, and Punjabi. Yeah, so I think that's how.
And well, much has been written about the distinctive satirical style of A Case of Exploding Mangoes. And you've said that growing up in a dictatorship leads naturally to humor. And I wondered if you could tell us about why you believe that is, and how you believe your own sensibilities may have been formed by living through Zia's regime.
Yeah, I mean, people who watch Pakistani TV talk shows these days, I mean, they must have noticed that that almost every single channel has got now, like, all these people. We year after year after year, we used to condemn these people that Lahore mein jo theater hota hai, wo bahut fohish hai. Wahan pe bahut fahashi hoti hai. That it is vulgar, that, sort of all these comedians, they make cheap jokes, and girls dance, and, there used to be police raids, and, every few months it will get banned. Now, all those people, the stars of that little kind of, niche industry, they are on mainstream TV, like, 8 p.m., like, and they've been my favorites for, like, 20 years. I think they're kind of, some of the finest kind of commentators that this country has produced. And for some strange reason, this thing has flourished in Punjab mostly. So I think because there has been that tradition that you stand on a street corner and you kind of, make fun of, like, Mohalle ka Maulvi, your own dad, like, sort of the Chaudhry Saab, the government, America, whatever. And it used to be much more risky. People used to be able to kind of make fun of, like, sort of religious stuff and spiritual stuff and all that. That was like part of our kind of normal day-to-day on-street discourse. And some of it has now kind of, gone mainstream, I think, and it's on TV, and I think it's great. I mean, good for them, like,
You said yesterday that you've always had a day job, and you've always written in short bursts, and I was really intrigued by this. You said some bursts are as short as 10 minutes long.
Yeah, and I said that, I mean, that was my longest burst. 10 minutes. 10 minutes is very
right?
long. Yeah. 10 minutes is very. No, when I'm rewriting, then I can spend like half an hour on something. But when I'm writing, it's like mostly really short, kind of, sort of one page a day is a brilliant, brilliant day for me. It doesn't happen like, sort of very often.
But I was intrigued. You said that when you were working full time, that sometimes you would be taking notes during a meeting and structuring structuring chapters while you were sitting with people. Now that you're writing full time, how has that impacted your work schedule? Does that mean that you have, or how has your relationship to your writing process changed, if at all?
I still have a job. I'll never leave my job. I think it's made it more difficult. When you have a full-time job, then you know that from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, you have like 1 hour lunch break, and then you have to be there, and then you have your weekends, or you could sneak in like an hour before your work starts, or like, sometimes late night. So you know, like, that you have to steal time from somewhere, sort of, that this is your day and this is like structured, and you have to kind of steal something. Okay, ek ghanta yahan se, aadha ghanta yahan se. But when you wake up, like, and your whole day is kind of stretched ahead of you, and you have nothing to do except, like, drop your son to school, kind of, talk to your wife, or sort of make breakfast, or stuff like that, or watch TV. So there's like nothing. So you think that, oh, the whole day is ahead of me. I can just do it whenever I want to, and you don't really do anything, because when you had that half an hour, you knew that that was the only time that you had, and you had to sit down and kind of try and be productive. But when you're kind of free, sort of, then it becomes, I think, for people like me, I'm sure it works. I mean, I have friends who've never done a day's job. They're full-time writers, and that's all they do. Yeah.
So do you find it helpful to impose a structure on your day? I mean, do you give yourself deadlines?
I think it is helpful. I think, yeah, when you kind of sort of know that you only have 2 hours in a day to indulge yourself in doing whatever you're doing. I think that's helpful.
Now, if you're writing, if you're happy with a page per day output, let's say, arbitrarily, it strikes me that you'd have to have a tremendous confidence that you can stick with it, and then you're going to get through a long, let's say 300-page book. You've got to really believe in the story that you're telling.
Yeah, and I'm kind of a one-idea person. When I have like one idea in my head, then I can't work on anything else. Because I have friends who are working like simultaneously on 2 books, or a book and a play and a movie script. I can't do that. If I'm working on a novel, then that's all I can do. I can't. And my kind of problem is that I know that till the time I don't finish that thing, I can't do anything else. So yes, I don't know. I would like to think that there is some kind of belief that you actually believe in doing whatever you're doing, and you have that faith that it's going to be good. No, you have like your doubts every day. You think that, oh, this is like this doesn't make sense. Why did I write this? Or why did I how did this happen? But you kind of sort of muddle through. I think you kind of.
Well, you've said that finishing a book is akin to the feeling of being left by a dear friend or a lover who is never coming back, and that now that you've finished your second book, so recently you're going through a grieving process. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about your revision process. Is it as painful as your writing process?
No, I'm kind of more of a rewrite person. I mean, I love rewriting stuff and kind of fixing it and kind of. So I somehow, I don't find it that problematic as kind of actually, sort of writing something for the first time. Because when something is on the page, then you can play with it, So I do believe in kind of, sort of going over and over and over it. And somebody said something recently, kind of something very obvious, that every time you read something that you've written, and every time you go through it, chances are that you'll find at least 10 things in it that you can improve. And in my case, that's completely true. Yeah.
And is that true even of published work as well? Do you still have that relationship to?
I know, I can't bear to read it. No, I don't. Really? I mean, I do it like for readings. I'll have like one pet chapter that I'll read everywhere. But no, I don't. I think it's perfect. When it's published, it's perfect. You can't do it.
Well, I know I'm not the only one who's anxious to hear a little bit of some of your more recent work.
How much time?
You would, you have all the time that you want. We have 25 minutes. Okay, so, cool. But we can, if you want to read for a little bit, and then we'll open it up to questions. So.
Okay. God, this is going to be long. Okay, I'll start reading it and get bored. Yeah. I wrote this piece. Sometimes people ask, like, where does the writing come from? Like, how do you write? Where do you get your idea? And sometimes it's as simple as somebody asking you, can you please write something for us? Like an editor, or like, sort of, and then you say, what? And you say, like, you're the writer, you think of something. So this particular piece, my friend Naiza here, she was curating this exhibition. She was doing a catalog, and she said, can you please write something? I said, I know nothing about art. He said, just write, something. So I just thought about it. I've lived in Karachi for a very long time, and when I was sort of single and before I got married, I moved around quite a bit. Like almost every year, I will find myself in a new place and in a new neighborhood. So I was getting nostalgic and kind of thinking about like sort of those days. So I wrote like these little sketches of all the places that I've lived in Karachi before I got married. Yeah. And they have like little kind of headlines which are quite obvious to, will be quite obvious to everyone. And the first one is called Aage Samandar Hai. Your first home in Karachi is a little room in a big empty house near Seaview. The owners live in Norway, the servants live in the house, and you live in a little extension that was probably meant to accommodate those servants. You have one bag of clothes and books, a cassette player, and 3 tapes. You drive a Suzuki 100 that you bought from a milkman. This is the first time in your life that you're living close to the beach. Judging by the stench in the evenings, it seems half of Karachi's population has pissed in the sea. At night, you wake up to the roar of the waves. For a moment, you are scared. Is this a giant bellowing? Is this a tornado approaching? Is this what grown-up life is like? A pair of Bengali servants, you will never discover their exact relationship, take care of the house. To your lonely heart, it seems they have been hired to canoodle in every corner of the house. They seem so much in love with each other, it frightens you. You wonder if you should have rented the premises in Bloch Colony where the owner promised that the water pump was situated only 1 street away and it would be okay if you wanted to keep goats. Your sustenance comes from a liter bottle of Fanta and a large fruit bun. You take a bite, you take a sip, you kickstart your bike and roar into the city. One day you pick up the bun and see fungus growing on it. You start spending your nights in Sabzi Mandi. So the next place is Sabzi Mandi ki sair. Without ever asking or telling, you move in with a friend who lives in a room in a private school right next to Sabzi Mandi. The school